Okay, welcome everybody. I think we have a special treat for you today. No pun intended, because what our guest does today is in the treat and snack space, mainly targeted towards babies and infants. But I'm maybe giving away a little bit of the punchline here, but I did see a teaser on her website about adult snacks coming soon. So I'm definitely going to ask her about that. I'm excited about that. But today, my guest is Sharon Cryan. And I met Sharon briefly at a recent investor event where she was presenting on stage, talking about her company, talking about their product and how it launched. And I was amazed, both at Sharon's presentation skills. She's a phenomenal founder, phenomenal creator, and presented her story really fast in a fascinating way. But the product is so cool. And as a dad of two kids, uh, you'll see, and if you're a parent, you're going to love this because she's inventing something for all parents, and I'm really excited to have her tell her story. So welcome to the podcast, Sharon.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
This is great. Okay, so the company's name is Food Nerd, which is a fun name, a really cool name. You guys have done a phenomenal job with like the brand, and even just kind of all the logo design kind of stuff. But you got to start us out with, how did this idea come about? Where did the company start? And yeah, tell us the origin story.
Yeah, so I'll first tell you the name. So Food Nerd is was actually a nickname that I was given in law school. So everyone literally called me a food nerd, and it was because I would bring my like giant coolers every day with me, and I had my fresh squeezed juices, I had my like sprouted, mega salads, I had all this healthy stuff that I brought with me every day to school, and at first I was like food nerd. I'm like, that's offensive. But then I was like, oh, I'm gonna honor this. This is awesome. Like I'm so proud to like have this. And it just kind of stuck. So the name, lots of people kind of came up with it for me. And I would say for like the most context, I think I'm convinced that our deepest why we do what we do, why we have, the passions that we fall into is really because of like some of your deepest childhood, kind of wounds. And for me, my mom has multiple sclerosis. She has MS, osteoporosis, a whole slew of chronic disease. And so she was actually diagnosed with MS while I was in her stomach, while she was pregnant with me. And so from a very young age, watching my mom's health deteriorate is really scary as a child, right? You're seeing her mobility go down. You're seeing the person that's your superhero lose their health is really traumatic. And so for me, I was really, I think becoming a food nerd to my core at a very young age because ironically my mom's health was deteriorating, but she had a sister who was a year and a half younger than her who was thriving. And it just didn't click for me in my brain. I couldn't understand it. How they're siblings, they have this similar genetics, how could they have such a different level of health? And from, the youngest I can remember being around, 8 years old, thinking, okay, well, I think the biggest difference between them is their diet. Their health was night and day, and their stress levels were night and day. And I just remember thinking, I don't want to have a chronic disease. I don't want my future children to ever see me fall down the stairs because, I'm losing the nerve function in my legs. And it was almost like it came from this deep wound. And I know it's a hard thing to talk about, but 6 out of 10 Americans have a chronic disease. And that means 6 out of 10, families are suffering with what I grew up with. And so that's my initial why. I really did not want to become, kind of a victim to a chronic disease. And I was like, you know what? Everything shows that the number one thing we can control is what we put in our mouth. And if that is the only thing I control, I'm going to become a food nerd and I'm going to care about everything that I put in my body because I don't want to get sick. And I don't want to, live a poor, poor quality of life where my little ones have to watch me suffer. So that's my core why.
So is your mom still with us?
She is still with us. She's not mobile. Oh yeah, she's been battling it for, I'll give my age away, for a little over 30 years. She's been battling MS, and um, it's been a roller coaster. It's an autoimmune disease, and for everyone listening that has someone in their family that suffers with autoimmune disease, it's a roller coaster. And I think my mom is an incredible story of you know, how you can continue to live on this planet with the people you love. Um, but it's a struggle, and it's an unfortunate reality that it's MS is only occurring in younger and younger people. And so I'm very passionate and happy to say that she's here, and she's got to meet my son, which was my biggest fear, is that she would never get to meet my son, but she has. And it's I feel very, very blessed.
Well, that's cool. I'm glad that she's still with us. My cousin's wife was diagnosed with MS in her, I want to say, early 20s, and she's since passed away. She might have lived maybe 12. I wish I knew the exact number. I should know the exact number, but anyway, I think less than 15 years. So um, yeah, that was really rough to see them go through that, and to see her struggle, as had been very, very healthy in her youth, and very active physically and athletically and everything. So that was really hard. But um, what age then? So since you saw this from almost from birth, at what point did you become a food nerd? Or at what point, like, I mean, was this like even as a kid that you were eating super healthy, or did it click at some point, maybe later in your teenage years or in college?
Yeah, so it definitely it really clicked in my teenage years. I would say so when I was around 14 is really when I started reading a lot of health books, but it's actually when I started like cutting things out of my diet, where I was like, I'm not going to put this ultra processed foods in my diet. I'm not going to do this. And it was honestly for me, the first thing I cut out was red meat. One of the big things is that at the time, my aunt, who was thriving, she only ate whole foods. So if it came out of a package, she probably didn't touch it. And if it wasn't like a single ingredient, like a bag of oats or something, she wouldn't put it into her body. And I just remember thinking, wow, like the discipline it takes to do that. And she never ate red meat. It was just something that her body never liked. And she never felt good on it. And so I was like, you know what, I'm kind of grossed out by it. I'm going to cut it out. And that was kind of one of the first things that I started experimenting with. And from there, I've made my way to a plant-based diet. So I am plant-based. I've been plant-based since I was in law school. So it's been well over a decade now. And I mean, I feel absolutely phenomenal. But for me, it was just kind of looking at, hey, the standard American diet, what are we doing to the foods? What's actually in it, and what data exists to show what things are related to chronic disease and what are not. And right. And like for me, it was like, I'm going to look at the overwhelming data. And that's kind of when I fell into like the blue zones. There's tremendous amount of data and research related to the blue zones. I don't know if you're familiar with the blue zones, but hey, these pockets of the world where humans are living on average 100 years with little to no chronic disease. Like to me, that's gold, right? That's what we all want. We want to live a long time with our babies and then our grandbabies, but we want to be able to run in the grass with them, right? We want to be able to not just be here, but really thrive and live with them. And so I did a study abroad in Japan during my undergrad, and Okinawa, Japan is a blue zone, and one of their main staples is the Japanese sweet potato. And I ate so much Japanese sweet potato when I was there. And ironically, while I was studying in Japan in my undergrad, that's when I discovered AGEs, ages for short, but advanced glycation end products. And that's when it all really clicked for me, when it's what is the actual mechanism behind these ultra processed foods that shortens our lives and cause all this inflammation and this damage on a cellular level. And once I discovered that, my mind was blown. AGEs were first discovered really out of Japan, and so we've known about them for almost 5 decades. And at that time, I was just about to go into law school, and so it was in my head, how come no one's talking about this, right? Like, this is a scientific, known phenomenon. These are chemical compounds that we know exist that are literally linked to every chronic disease and are killing us slowly every day, but no one's talking about them. And I was just like, finding them on my own, and literally reading like translated research on it. And I was just like, we need to talk about this. So really, when I got into law school, and I had another kind of epiphany where I was like, oh, okay, that's why no one understands the food manufacturing, regulatory system. No one understands what's even happening. I think there's a big misconception that the FDA is this like really big, strong body full of, thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of employees that make sure the food is safe in our food supply. And that, like, if it's sold in the US, I think, and I thought this before I knew, I thought, well, if it's sold in the US, it has to be safe, right? Like, our government wouldn't allow foods that are not safe to be sold, right? Especially to our babies. And then when I got into law school, when I realized that the FDA is not a proactive agency, it's a retroactive agency. So they're doing their best to try to, make sure the food is safe. So they set some guidelines, but they're not out there testing all these foods. They're not out there testing these chemicals and these additives and all these different byproducts. They're not testing that. So I realized that the duty is on the food manufacturer to make a safe product. But these are businesses, these are corporations, and they want to make cheap products. They want to make cheap products that taste really good and that keep selling, which I get.
Yeah, they're kind of addictive in multiple ways, right?
Oh, of course, like there's no legal definition of an ultra processed foods. The FDA won't define it. But in the kind of loose definitions that are out there, ultra processed foods are literally habit forming foods that are ultra palatable, that are designed to be addicting. And so, like, of course, if you're just trying to think bottom line, I'm trying to sell products that people love. Well, of course I want it to be really sweet. Of course I want it to be really salty. And you know what? I wanted to have this dopamine-like interaction with my customer's brain. So that way when they eat it, they're like, yes, give me more. And so it's created this food culture here in the US where we make products to be shelf stable. We make them to be super addictive. And then health and nutrition is literally like, it's on the back burner, right? We're not really looking at it, and we're not talking about it. And then we're also not testing. We're not really testing for the long-term impact of these foods, right? So, but now the data is starting to come out, and it's terrifying. And it's showing that, our kids' generation, the first generation where their health span is going in the opposite direction. And it's like, wait, that doesn't make sense. With all of these incredible improvements in health and quality of life, why is this happening? Well, it's because, 70% of our diet is these ultra processed foods. So I became the ultimate food nerd, let's say, in law school. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to have a microphone, and I just need to tell everyone that it's not that these foods are just not good for us. They're harmful for us, and they're literally hurting our children. And we got to stand up for our little ones because they don't have a voice. And so, that was a long answer to say that the food nerd really has started young, but it really came out when I understood the full food system and how it actually works.
That's amazing. I love it. So when you were going to law school, was your goal like, I'm gonna disrupt the big food industry? Was that the intention?
I would say it was like an intention in my head. But when you're actually in it and you're like, there's no one there's no job description that you can go out there and find that says, all lawyers who want to disrupt the food industry, sign here. It was, I actually got into, being a commercial real estate attorney. And it was so funny because that's where the jobs are, right? Where I was, practicing and working on Long Island and Manhattan at the time. And that's where the jobs were. But my passion was there. I didn't, I kind of knew that, hey, policy takes a long time to actually take effect and make a change. And I just knew that it wasn't going to happen that way. It's like, I knew the code was needed to be written better and there needed to be better policies in place. But I was like, man, that's not going to get done in my lifetime, right? Like if we do it this traditional policy kind of route. So I practiced law for a little bit, and Food Nerd as a business, the concept started where people started asking me to prepare their food for them, and this was because I was carrying that cooler full of fresh food, and people were like, well, you seem like you have a lot of energy, and you're doing well in class, so whatever you're eating, like, just make me some. So it started as like this, like, just side hustle. It was a side hustle I had in law school, because who doesn't need more money in law school, right? So I was making these fresh foods and making it for other people. And then it kind of happened when I got into practice as well. I was, the firm, other attorneys at the firm, like, I was cooking food for them. And then it just kind of spread. And at that time, all of the research that I was looking at that was kind of showing, hey, we need to eat more fresh food, like real food that hasn't been, denatured and cooked and just, beat up by humans, right? And so I was just making really clean, fresh food that was organic, that was at least 51% enzymatically active, which means hasn't been cooked to really high temperatures. So, like, a lot of the stuff was still intact. And man, I started seeing the impact on people's health in, like, just such a transformative way. Like, I would be cooking for somebody for like 2 weeks, making all their food. And I mean, not besides just losing weight, their skin was glowing. They felt better. They were just so, like, the best version of themselves. And they're like, God, please don't stop making my food. Like, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm feeling phenomenal. And some of them were like, hey, my, all of my different biomarkers are correcting themselves. I don't have to be on my blood thinner, or I don't have to be on all these, like, different medications. And I was like, well, that's pretty powerful. Like, I knew food was powerful, but I guess I didn't realize how powerful food was. And so, that was kind of Food Nerd Meals. And so a lot of people don't know that there was the Food Nerd Meals concept that I was doing on the side. And that was really, really insightful, because it made me realize, because at this time I was not thinking I'm an attorney, right? That's what I went to school for. That's what I'm going to do. But I was just like, if I had to stop writing contracts or stop seeing these people's faces every week when I was delivering their food, I was like, there's no way I could stop seeing these people's faces and how happy they were. Like, it was so fulfilling. And so I was, at that time I was just cooking for so many people that I was like, I can't do both. And so I chose to, like, leave my legal career and just continue making food for people. And I remember one of the guys on Long Island I was cooking his food for, he had dropped like 60, 70 pounds. And he was eating my food for like 4 months. And he had just had a baby, and he was telling me, like, crying to me, how he finally feels like he's in control of his health. And he's not scared now, that he feels like he's going to live a healthy life with his baby, and he has the tools, and now he understands what real health feels like. And I was like, man, if all of this was worth it just to help encourage that, like, it was totally worth all of it. And so from there, I started Food Nerd Meals, and I asked myself a question. I was like, can I change the world doing this? And if I scaled this, can I change the world? And unfortunately, the answer is no, right? Not everybody can afford a premium meal service, right? You look at the Blue Aprons, the HelloFresh at the world, they were really blowing up at that time. And they're great services, but the average person cannot afford it. And it's not sustainable. And there's all these different, aspects. So I decided to shut Food Nerd Meals down and start Food Nerd Inc. And I didn't know what we were going to do at the time. All I knew is that I was going to make a business that made the same quality foods that I was making with the fresh meals, but I was going to make it shelf stable. And I was going to make it affordable and accessible to families like mine, single disabled mother of 6. I wanted to make sure that our product was actually going to get to the people that needed it. And so that's where Food Nerd Inc. started, and that was 2019.
Wow. Okay. So you had been doing this food meal service on the side and then decided, man, I want to get this feeling that a few of these clients had. I want to scale that and kind of, make it as big as possible. That's cool. You casually just dropped something though about single disabled mother of 6. So your mom through all of this was single and then raising 6 kids? I mean,
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. On assistance, on government assistance. She was doing this all. And that's why, it's it makes me, when I always say like what's my true passion, I think nutritional equality is really my true passion because right now in the US, having access to organic healthy foods and having educated parents is kind of it's a luxury, right? But what the science shows is that no child like no child should go hungry. No child should not have the nutrition their body needs for their body to develop properly. And that is like such a sad reality because 95% of kids in the US have nutritional deficiencies, which means that something in their body is compromising. And when you think about the first 1,000 days of life from conception to 2, like irreversible damage is a cause when there's a nutritional deficiency. And that's unacceptable to me, right? And I think about, what we were eating when we were growing up. I mean, we had government cheese and we had just the most ultra processed foods you can imagine. Lucky Charms, like that was staples. And we didn't have fresh food, right? We literally had canned food, boxed food, all of the stuff that isn't full of good stuff. And so that was one of the core, insights that I've realized was like, that's a reality. There's a lot of single parents out there. There's a lot of people who have a certain amount of income and they don't know what to do with that. They don't know how crucial nutrition is for their babies. And I think that's a societal flaw. We haven't put, we've made kind of eating healthy this like very posh thing, right? Where it's like, oh, I go to yoga and I have my juice and it's a luxury thing to have a $20 salad, right? But it's like, no, like nutrition is the fundamental right to every human. We all should have what we need to develop properly because there's no way that a child who doesn't have proper nutrition is fighting fair in school versus a child who did. How do you expect their bodies and their brains and to properly have that, fair playing ground? It doesn't exist. And so it's like, yeah, I get real excited to talk about it because my mom didn't have that as a single mother of 6. She didn't have the education. She didn't know. And so I'm, for every 12 packs purchased at Food Nerd, we donate to a child in need. And it's something I'm so passionate about because I just, especially here in the US, we should be giving our children the best food possible. And that should be every parent's goal. And yeah, that's our goal with Food Nerd.
I love that. I love that. So the other thing that I think is really cool about your story is professionally, all of your education was law. I mean, your professional education, right? And all of this is self-taught, just your passion for more knowledge around food and the healthy impact that various types of food can have and the change that can make in people's lives. So you're like, okay, I've got this food meal service. I'm going to convert into Food Nerd Inc. and try and scale this up. But you said at the time, at the very beginning, you didn't have an idea what did you do? Did you start doing a ton of market research, or how did you come up with the first idea, and how did you say, okay, here's what we're going to launch with?
Yeah. So, I guess I've always been under the impression that if you don't have a skill set, that's totally fine because someone else does, right? And it's your job to find that person and to see if you have a shared passion. And if you do, then build a team. So I was reaching out. So I was coming across this research because I was just looking into it, right? I was looking into AGEs, I was looking into phytonutrients, I was looking into processing methods. Um, and the data is out there. Like there's so much data out there. It's out there. It's just I was filtering through it and then I was saying, "Oh, hey, here's this researcher who's, has been researching AGEs for decades." And I'm going to reach out to them. And I'm going to reach out to all of these different people who have the skill set, the scientific, the biochemist, the nutritional scientist, because I know that we have us the same goal. We just never met. We just haven't met yet, right? So I would literally I would find these research papers, and I would, those long scientific peer-reviewed science, papers that you see on PubMed. Like I would read those papers and I would say, wow, we know that sulforaphane, for example, it's what makes broccoli so good for you. It's this antioxidant compound. It's the most anti-cancerous compound ever found in nature. And there's all this like clinical trials on all this. And so I would literally just I would stalk to my best ability all of those researchers. I would find their email and email them and say, hey, I'm trying to come up with a new way to make food that preserves those nutrients and doesn't destroy them. Do you want to talk? And it was literally just having no ego and just reaching out to people and saying, and it was bizarre because they'd be like, yeah, let's talk. And I'm like, okay. And then we get on calls and I would say, I want to make a shelf stable product for my nephew who has autism, for my nieces and nephews. I have 16 nieces and nephews. I want to make products for them that has sulforaphane in it. Let's work on it together. And so that's how I got connected to Dr. Jed Fahey from Johns Hopkins, who's now our chief scientific advisor, which is like, so awesome. He's like a celebrity to me. And because he spent 40, 50 years researching this compound, and his mission is to get this compound into kids. But him sitting here telling kids to eat cups and cups of raw broccoli, like that isn't going to do it. Right. So he was like, wow, your vision, if we can make this a shelf stable product that retains these sensitive compounds and kids will actually eat it, like, yes, like my life now is full circle. And I just kept doing that with so many of these scientists. And to where we have this incredible scientific team now, and everybody was just, hey, we're on the same mission. So it was a little bit of just saying like, I don't know how I'm going to get to this end goal. I don't have this. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a biochemist. I'm not a nutritional scientist. But there's a lot of those out there who probably want the same thing as me. And I'm just going to cold email a bunch of them. And that's kind of how the vision just kept evolving and evolving. And pretty much we got to a point where we found these engineers out of Boston that were willing to take on the challenge, that were going to help me design something that was in my mind and bring it to life. And then all of these scientists to help formulate and help do the research and the testing. And that's how we got here. It's people who share the same passion with all of these really cool skill sets. So I would say if I have one skill set, I'm very persistent. I will email you. I will call you. I will get in front of you somehow. Because I know everybody wants the best for our children. And I was just going to make sure I didn't stop until I created a product that was the best for our children. So
I love it. I'm assuming at this point when you're starting everything, you don't have a pile of money to offer these people. So you're just saying like, hey, I'm passionate about this. If you're passionate about this, it seems like you are, because this is your life's work, your research. Just work with me on this. And it's somehow, some way, I'm going to create a company. I mean, were you like, hey, I'm going to give you some equity and we're going to get some funding and we're going to do this thing? So you were just kind of assembling your Avengers team, your food Avengers team or whatever. Um, and was that the big promise? Is like, hey, I'll give you some equity and we're going to change the world together.
Yeah, yeah, that was the promise. That was the promise. It's like, yeah, I don't have much now, but I know we're going to get there together. And whether it was equity or whether at the time um, it was, a lot. I mean, honestly, I don't even know what I would, if I give equity to everybody that helped, we would have no equity left in the business. So honestly, yeah, no, a lot of it was just people wanting to just help the vision and just people being really good humans, right? And saying, yeah, you know what? I'm going to help you and I'll be your advisor. I'll be your mentor. I'll help answer and point you in the right direction. I'll make connections. And some people I was like trying to give equity and they were like, no, like, you don't know what you're giving away yet. So I'm not going to take it. It doesn't feel right. And then there were some people that were like, hey, give me a bunch of equity. Right. And I was like, well, that doesn't feel good either. Right. So it is this balance of, and I am an attorney, so I do have that, kind of know-how and that wherewithal to understand the value of things. And so I think that gave me an advantage to say, like, I don't have to like sell my soul in order to also do something and build something that makes the world a better place. Like, I can start to raise capital and I can start to put, real value behind this. So it was kind of this like inflection point of seeing people validate it from the outside world, giving them equity, and then also saying, okay, I need to start paying these people that are helping me because they deserve to be paid, and so I need to raise capital for it. And so it was that combination of using equity to build the value, and then using the value to build and raise capital behind it.
That's awesome. Um, okay, so you're working with the scientists. You're got a couple of rock stars on your team now. Everyone's kind of in it for the mission, which is super cool. At what point did you arrive at what your ultimately your first product was going to be?
Yeah, so I would say that was about in 2020, end of 2019. We were, kind of playing around with a few different technologies at this time. And I was, it was funny. I was actually having these conversations with customers from the meal business that I was running. And a lot of them, I would just hop on the phone with, and I was like, hey, like if you could eat something all day and like you had no guilt related to it, like what would you eat? And a lot of them were like, oh man, I would just eat chips. I love chips. If I could eat chips, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I would, and not feel guilty. And I was like, okay, all right. So I'm going to start prototyping chips and I'm going to try to take these fresh sprouted mega foods and these fruits and vegetables and I'm going to turn them into chips. And so or some of them were like, oh, Cheetos, Puffs. Like it was all those like really addictive, ultra processed foods that like have that snacking crunch that like where you just keep going back and back. Like that snacking is just, it fulfills like every human emotion for whatever reason. And so I was like, okay, we got to start with snacks. And so we were playing around with these sprouts and I was making just the healthiest things you could think of. Like I was taking broccoli sprouts, which is like just the healthiest food on the planet, right? And I was like staring at it as this like little leafy green, and I'm like, I'm gonna turn you into a snack that people will eat. I don't know how. And so we were in R&D for 2.5 years, trying to make these really bitter, not that great tasting foods try to taste delicious. And so I remember my sister and my niece stopped by my R&D facility at the time, and we had just pulled something out of our freeze dryer. And it didn't look like anything. It looked like a kind of just a pile of something. And I put it in a bag and I like handed it to my niece, and she was like crunching on it and eating it, and she ate the whole bag. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, in that little bag, there were thousands of sprouted seeds, thousands. And I made it taste, I added some spices and some herbs, and I added some different vegetables to kind of make it like this cheesy flavor, because I was trying to make something taste like a Dorito, honestly. um, and she crushed it, and she was like,
A broccoli Dorito.
Yeah, she was a year and a half and she was just like crunching on it and she ate the whole bag and I was like, okay, baby food. Yes. Like let's start with babies. I was like, because if like babies care the least amount about appearance and texture and all these things that adults are so finicky with. Um, and that's where it really clicked. I was like, okay, well, the people, if I had to change one person's health, it would be a baby for sure, right? Like that's who I would put all my chips on, right? I would put all on that trying to improve that baby's health. And so we started R&D and prototyping baby products. And through our R&D, we realized like, there's so much exciting prototypes that like kids were loving. And we're like, okay, so what do kids eat the most? Gerber baby puffs. That's what they eat the most of. That's, the most commonly consumed baby snack. Well, that's what we're going to make. We're going to make the best for you baby puff. And that's what we have today. That's what we've launched our Food Nerd Mega Puff. 5 different SKUs, 5 different beautiful colors, filled with organic fruits, vegetables, and thousands of sprouted seeds. And from there on, we made, melt and cookies and biscuits and all these other products that we're going to be launching over the next, handful of years here. And, now every single bag of Food Nerd Mega Puffs has 100% of a child's daily recommended amount of fruits and vegetables, and up to 70% of their proteins, fats, fibers, and is loaded with phytonutrients, like thousands of phytonutrients that we've tested for, and is free from all the bad stuff. So little to zero AGEs, and has none of these carcinogen heavy metals, none of these toxic, compounds. And I'm so proud to say that now I'm a mother. So now I have an almost 2-year-old. And ever since he was 5 months old, he's had a bag of Food Nerd Puffs every single day, sometimes 2 bags. And I always talk about that parent food guilt that every parent has every day. Like, oh my God, what did they eat? Did they get fruits? Did they get vegetables? Did they get protein? Did they get this? I've gone to bed every single night, like sleeping like a baby, because I know my son got all of his fruits and vegetables, all of his fats, all of his proteins, all of his micronutrients. Like I can just like wipe my hands clean because I feel like a super parent, right? And like you can't put a price on that feeling that you did what you could for your child's health that day. So that's what we have now is our baby product line.
I love that. I love the fortuitousness of like the discovery with your niece. Like, oh my gosh, she just like pounding this bag of like freeze dried whatever the mush that you'd come up with. But I want to take a step back. You also dropped something very casually. This R&D facility. Like, how did you get an R&D facility again without having like tons and tons of money? Had you raised some capital by that point, or how did you even get access to an R&D facility?
Yeah, so you know what? It was really interesting. So it was the facility that I was making the food out of. So I had, when I was doing the fresh meal, I had rented a facility. It was probably 2,000 square feet max. And I had rented it for a pretty good price. And it had, it had what it needed to have, right? It had the basics. It had a walk-in fridge, walk-in freezer. And at that time, one of my customers that I was preparing, husband and wife that I was preparing their fresh food for, this was even before I really understood what a startup was and what fundraising was. I was still meal prepping on the side while I was in R&D to pay for the rent, to pay for the team member I had helping me at the time. But one of my customers literally came up in the facility and was like, we want to give you $25,000 and we want to invest in you and we want you to help more people. And I was like, $25,000. I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's so much money. And I was like, I cried. I was like, they're like, you've changed our life so much and we believe in what you're doing and we want to help. And this was just a husband and wife. She was a nurse and he was an engineer, and they were just good people that wanted my vision that I had. They wanted to help it come to life. And so that was my first $25K check. And then from there, I was like, okay, like, what can I do with this 25? Then I was like, okay, well, if I had 50, I could do this. And so it's like, I'm going to go find and knock on some more doors. So I actually went to At the time, it was a what is it? Founders Institute. I don't know if you're familiar with Founders Institute. So I went to a Founders Institute meeting, a meetup here in Buffalo, and they were literally, it was a time where like a group of people, like people just got together and founders could go and they had 60 seconds to pitch. And there was investors, there were other founders in the room, and I just went up and I pitched. And then I found my second angel investor who wrote a 25K check. And then I was like, okay, all right, I'm starting to get what a startup means. I'm starting to get that if you have a vision that other people share, like people will invest in you. Like this is a real thing. And I was like, this is awesome. And so it was a little bit of like just trying to find those events, those startup networking events, and telling people what you're doing and doing that as much as possible. So I was going to, and this was, remember, this was during COVID. So this was tough time to raise. This was like when all those events were started to dwindle. Networking events were kind of only virtual at this point. So it was knocking on a lot of doors. And it was just driving a little bit of value at a time with the money and the resources we had to say, hey, here's this next prototype. You know, it's not beautiful, but I got a kid to eat it and the goal was achieved. And so now I want to work on making it prettier, making it taste better. I need some more money to do that. And I think that's why they're called angels investors, because they're literal angels. Like, you know, when you're just like, you know, running out of capital every day, angels are literally the God's gift. Like they just kept Food Nerd going. And I raised a little over 900,000 in my friends and family kind of pre-seed round over a 2-year period. And it was a 10K check here, you know, a 25K check here, a 100K check here. And it wasn't a round. It was just you know, funding as we went. And so that's how we got to our first million. And at the end of that, that's when we had everything like was solid. We had the solid business plan. We knew exactly what we needed to do. We still didn't know the full vision, but we had the right fundamental puzzle pieces in place. And honestly, one of the biggest things that I think I was learning was how to pivot and how to say yes. The vision is still the main goal, but the product isn't going to be the way there. And scrapping a lot of products sucks. It's like, you know, each product is like a baby almost to you, right? And you're like, well, I can turn this into something. And, you know, at the time we had an adult cereal that we were making because like that's who was buying products at the time. Like I had adults and I was just trying to like, and the cereal was phenomenal. Like people loved it, but it was so expensive to make. And cereal was like such a tough market. And Magic Spoon was doing some things, right? They were kind of proving this, but it was like, man, the cereal, it was the only raw organic fruit and vegetable based cereal. I had to charge like $25 a box to make a margin to like have a sustainable business. And I couldn't do it. And I spent months and months on this prototype and my heart was like in shambles over it, right? Because I was like, but I had to break up with that concept at that time and focus on, you know, putting it together. And that's where it's like, man, we made 250 different prototypes in the lab to really get to the point where we knew we could build a sustainable business model and also help the people we wanted to, which was infant products.
Wow. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, right? Not have an emotional attachment to all these things that you'd created, but staying true to your bigger vision to, you know, stay focused on, okay, if this isn't the best way to get there, I can ditch that thing and move to the next thing. Let's go back to your niece. You'd kind of, oh my gosh, she loves this thing. Baby food is the thing, but that's an audience of one, right? Not really statistically relevant. So how did you think about, okay, is my niece just super weird, or how do I validate that this is actually a thing? Like, what were the next steps that you took after that?
Yeah. So the next steps was I had one investor that had come on that was a parent himself. So he was like, I get it. Like, I cannot get my kid to eat healthy, but if you can give me something that my kid will eat, let's start doing some focus groups. Like, and so I did. So I was able to get some products that his kids ate. And I was like, hey, just so you know, they just ate sprouted broccoli seeds and avocado and all these like currants and all these amazing superfoods. And we put together focus groups. And it was, handful of moms and dads and a handful of kids and a few different, in the age range that we were going for. And we literally had so many focus groups, and we brought people in, we paid them in products, we just gave them free product at the end to give us like 30-40 minutes of their time. And it was, you can't put a price tag on that either. Like, just being able to watch the kids interact with them, listen to the questions that the parents were asking them, hey, what really matters to you? Because we're going to spend money on food, right? We're going to do it. Parents are going to buy products for their kids, but why do you spend what you spend on the products that you are buying, and what do you wish you had? And every one of them was like, yeah, if I could buy a product that was only organic fruits and vegetables, no flours and oils and sugars and all this stuff, and my kid ate it, I would buy it. And I was like, okay, well, what price point would you buy it for? Right. And they're like, I would pay $4, $5, $6. I would pay, here's what I would pay. And then being able to take those consumer insights and then dial that in and build a business model around those insights. I was like, okay, if we can get 50 parents, that's a good data set to start with, right? These focus groups of like 30 to 50 parents. And then we started, just, okay, tell your friends, tell your friends and tell their friends. And then it kind of just evolved from there, where we started, feeling really good about the business model that we could achieve, right? We knew like, okay, the technology then became the biggest hurdle, because we know kids would eat it, parents would buy it, but how the heck are we going to scale this technology when we're doing it at a benchtop manual, process at our R&D facility? That became the biggest hurdle. And that's what we needed to put real dollars behind.
Yeah, that makes sense. In fact, my next question was going to be, if the cereal was so expensive to create, how did you manufacture the puffs to be competitive in that category? And I mean, I've bought a lot of puffs, yogurt puffs and other puffs for my two kids over the years. Um, I can't remember how expensive they were. But how did you end up being able to get your product competitively priced? Or did you say, hey, it's going to be twice as much than these other puffs, but it's worth it? Like, what was the strategy there, and how did you do that?
Yeah. So we, and the point of like, we know we're an organic kind of premium product, because we kind of have to be out the gate. We really have to make this splash, but we don't want to be, so premium, where parents like can't afford it. So we really kind of dialed in at this price point of $4.99 per bag, right? That's what our puffs are right now. And to put into perspective, and that's for 1 ounce, which is 100% of your child's daily fruits, vegetables, all those data points, right? Gerber, for example, is $3.99 for an ounce. So for the same serving size, $1 less, you're getting no protein, no fat, no fiber, no minerals. 2 minerals, 2 vitamins, right? The synthetics that they add back, but you're not getting any phytonutrients. You're not getting all of this other stuff. And I was like, we felt that price, we saw the willingness to pay for parents, but we were like, the value that you're getting for your dollar is so night and day difference. You'd have to buy 6 cartons of Gerber puffs in order to reach not even half of the levels that we have in our products. Like, so we started looking at this price point of like, listen, the organic baby food market is going up in general, right? So Gerber's, we're not that far off. And like the premium in between, so like your $4.50 or $5.50, kind of premium products that are organic, they're still just as ultra processed. They just have organic ingredients versus non, or a more premium brand, but you're not getting anything more for your dollar. And so we started having this conversation with consumers of like, if you had to spend another 50 cents, per snack, would you do it if you were going to get, 100% of your fruits and vegetables? Every parent was like, all day I would do that. And so it was like really dialing in that price point, and then, honestly bringing on an incredible CFO who I'm so blessed to have as a partner, who knew the CPG space and really knew how to go into the market at the right price point, where we could have a sustainable business that we could build around it. But we were actually driving such value that we don't feel bad about paying 50 cents or a dollar more, because your kid's getting real food and so much of their food that they need for the day. So it's like that price point we feel really good about. And we hope, it's always my goal to continue to drive more value. And I believe as we continue to grow our technology and get at larger production capacity, we can continue to make better price point products as well.
I love that, because your original goal was, hey, how can I take this to the masses and not just be up here in like the high net worth kind of families or whatever? How do I even get this into like third world countries or places where they may even need it the most? So I love that part of your mission. So then what made it such a big difference between like the cereal and that you were able to come down and be so competitive in your pricing?
Yeah, so that was kind of the technology being able to dial down. So the cereal, we had to take so much material, so many raw sprouts, so many fruit and vegetables, and like truly condense them into such small space. So that way the density was like a cereal, and it would sit in milk, and it would sit in water just like a normal cereal. And so the volume and the amount of product we had to fit was so much. And we were trying to hit really high, nutrient density levels for adults. So being able to have, dial that down, because kids need a lot less nutrition than an adult, right? And then also kids love airier products. They love the lighter, they love the not as dense products. And so it was kind of a perfect fit of how can we dial in the technology to not have to use as much raw material, but hey, we don't need it because, we would be giving them 400% of their protein that day, right? Like, so it was a combination of, the right amount of nutrition that was needed for kids, and the technology being able to condense, the exact amount that we needed and nothing more. And that's what was like the sweet spot for us to say our technology can scale and we can do this. And I'm not saying we're not going to bring cereals back. We'll probably totally bring cereals back, but they're going to be in a different form. They're going to be different, ratio, and a different pack size, right? Because I think that when there's just this built-in concept that cereal's got to be really cheap. People don't want to pay a lot for it because you're so used to paying a few dollars for this giant box of sugar, right? And sugar is cheap, right? Like wheat flour, corn flour, that's all really cheap ingredients. And so we just, it's impossible to take organic fruits and vegetables and compete on a 1-to-1. So we had to like break the mold of like, yes, the food is going to eat like a cereal, but it's nothing like the cereal we know. So we can't really call it, we can't put it in the same pack, price point architecture. We really have to create something unique that can have the right associated price point. And that's what we've, really spent the time doing.
Okay. And that's the coming soon, like adult snack kind of thing. Okay. So is it going to be, in terms of like how I should anticipate this, is it going to be like a granola type thing? Is it like a take on the go snack, or is it eat with milk or eat with something else kind of a snack? Like, how are you going to present that to the consumer audience?
Yeah, so it's literally going to be like individual snack bags, just like you have your individual kind of bags of puffs or chips or any of your pretzels, any type of bag like that. So your individual serving size, but it's just going to be a crunchy, delicious snack that tastes like dark chocolate, or it tastes like banana bread, or it tastes like chocolate covered strawberry, and you can eat it, sitting at your desk, which is how I eat it, because I'm stuck on my laptop all day, and so I just munch on it. Or you can throw it in your favorite milk of choice and eat it like a cereal. So it's really however you want to eat it. But the most important is that you're getting your fiber, you're getting your protein, your fat, and you're getting phenomenal phytonutrients that are going to make you feel like a superhuman. And so however you want to eat it, that's your call, but just get it in, because we actually had I'll tell you a funny story. When we were launching some prototypes of this, we had an 80-year-old man call in and say, I want the chocolate broccoli cereal. He had realized, like, he had, seen one of I did a small clip on the news and talking about how much broccoli we were hiding in all of these, bites. And he was just like, I hate broccoli, but my doctor wants me to eat it. It was just so funny because he was like not our target consumer, but he was just like, I need healthier food and it tastes like chocolate. So like, give me it. And he was like, I don't have a phone. I'm not going to buy it online. So we literally walked into our facility and we sold him like bags. Like it was like we had a retail store. It was so funny, but it just shows you that like, there's just core insight that like everybody just wants to feel good. Like we all just want to feel healthy, and eating healthy is such a struggle every day for all of us. And like, I just want to make it healthier and easier for people. Like, and I love deliciously disguising sprouts. Like they're like just it's like a challenge of mine because if the world like was healthier and everybody just felt better, just like that's the world I want to live in. Like that's a utopia that I dream that our kids will grow up in, right? And our grandkids will grow up in, where like we can start to really not be these, victims to this ultra processed foods that have so much control over our health. Um, and so I want to make ultra processed foods that are not ultra processed. And I'm um I'm excited to say that it's a continued effort of ours to like really we have such an exciting R&D team that is constantly innovating, and I'm going to make it my mission to make a better, not a better for you, a best for you version of every ultra processed food. So we're going to make it happen.
I love that mission. I love it because I would eat super healthy stuff if it tasted good. So my biggest question is how, even going back to the stuff that your niece was eating, how have you made this stuff taste good and still have the magic? Like in your presentation, one of the things that blew my mind was that you're able to process this stuff into long shelf life a long shelf life format, but preserve 100% or very high percentages of the nutrients and all the healthy stuff, right? That kind of blew my mind. I didn't even know that was possible. So the fact that you guys are doing that is so cool. Then how do you make broccoli taste good while preserving all of those, the healthy aspects of it?
Yeah, so the cool thing is is that when you because there's no high heat in our process. So heat typically like really can destroy some incredible flavor compounds that are in food. So when you think we're taking all these fresh ingredients, and we're actually maintaining the incredible, the phytonutrients, right, which are the flavor profiles and the colors of, let's say, blueberries, and let's say our blueberry currant puff, for example, has currants and dates and blueberries in there. When you eat it, it tastes like you're eating a blueberry, right? Because we're preserving all of the good stuff because there's no high heat. And honestly, fruit tastes delicious, right? There's just this natural, delicious, aspects of fruit that have so many different flavor profiles. And so when we work with fruit and vegetables and really great spices and herbs, like we're just using natural, like the natural flavors of food to make it taste good. And so we have our orange mega puff, which is our savory one, and that one is avocado bell pepper. Right? Avocado's delicious. Bell peppers are delicious, right? We add a little bit of spices in there, right? We add a little bit of Himalayan sea salt. So like, it's like small things that when you leave it in its whole unheated form, you can actually taste the full flavor of food. It actually just, we're not doing anything that's crazy magic except letting you taste the food for what it is.
Wait, but I got to play devil's advocate here for a second, because if you handed me a raw head of broccoli and I had to put that in my mouth, I would be punching you in the face, right? Like that's almost like there's no way. I would have to be dying, and even then, I might second guess whether I was going to eat this broccoli. I'd almost rather just die. So, the natural food profile of like broccoli or cauliflower is definitely not my jam. But what you're saying is you compare, or you pair that with like fruit flavors and maybe even some of these spices, right?
To kind of mask it. Yeah, I like to say deliciously disguised. Um, and we, in all of our baby products, we don't use any natural flavors. We don't use any flavor enhancements. We just use whole foods. And it's really, our technology allows us to dial in the fruit to vegetable to sprout ratio, where we've just have so many, so much know-how and trade secrets in house where we know those ratios of how we're able to, to mask that bitter with counteracting it with like these umami flavors and some of these like really subtle, sweet flavors that are coming through, and some of the sour flavors that are coming through from the fruit that, kids actually really love those flavors. Like they love the sour, they love the bitter. You just can't have 100% bitter. And that's the, as a parent, that's the tricky thing that we face every day. We put on their plate, and reasonably so, we put broccoli here, then we put, black beans here, and then we put, some strawberries here. And like the kid's naturally going to go for the strawberries first, right? They're going to want the sweet. And so like right now, it's so tough to get kids to eat healthy because the broccoli is going to be left on their plate. They're not going to want to eat the broccoli. And you got to eat it whole. So you're getting all that bitterness at one time, right? And instead, if you like really merge and blend all those flavors together, like the mildness kind of starts to kind of level out, and you start to have all of the flavors counteract each other in this way where it's like, oh, and then we can dial in and add in, just 73 wild blueberries in one pack of our blueberry currant puff, for example. So we can dial in and put some more blueberries in there to help counteract those the 5,000 sprouted seeds that are in there. And that's the win-win, right? Is that, you want them to eat them, but individually to get kids to eat those is, I mean, it's a battle to say the least. It's a bloody battle to try to force kids to eat that. And even if you did, they're only going to eat a small amount, right? So like it's this, combination of our know-how and the technology that we can deliciously disguise. And the other thing is that we're doing sprouts. And sprouts, we grow them in-house. So literally we take those fresh seeds, we germinate them in-house, and then within a 24-hour period, turn them into the shelf-stable product. And being able to do that and control the growing cycle allows us to grow these incredible plants right before the true heavy bitterness kicks in. So we can kind of dial in, we want to grow it to its nutritional peak, but we don't want all of those really bitter compounds. So like we can really dial that in. And that's something that's, really specific to Food Nerd, and why we do what we do is because we really know these plants. We are food nerds to our core. Like we really know them.
There's something magical about that. And it's kind of, I became a smoothie guy because, you know, you can have all these normally, what I would even say like nasty tasting things by themselves in isolation, blended together. And you're like, oh, wow, that's actually pretty good. And oh my gosh, I just drank like a whole carrot and a bunch of broccoli and a bunch of cauliflower, and it actually didn't taste too bad. In fact, I like, maybe I'm just going to be a smoothie guy, 3 meals a day, every day for the rest of my life. Just do everything as a smoothie, right?
Yeah. And that's one of the core insights too, is like, you can have, there's so many different ways that you can eat healthy, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't take away the crunchy fun stuff. Right. And that's like that's our sweet spot. That's what Food Nerd is really trying to do. Like totally. Like I went through a phase where I was like, smoothies aren't doing it for me. Like they're just not, or like salads aren't doing it for me. And like, we gotta be able to have really truly healthy options in every occasion. So that way, like we don't fall out of our healthy habits. Right. So it's like, yeah, I can have a smoothie in the morning for breakfast, and maybe I can have a salad, for lunch, but I want to have my healthy mac and cheese, or I want to have my piece of pizza. Like we got to be able to have that, get the nutrition in, but still have some of those really, emotionally comforting foods, but have it be in an equal balance, and being able to have that crunchy deliciousness without that compromise is like, I think is such a win-win, right? Because all of these foods, all healthy foods have a place in our life. It's just the crunchy have overtaken our lives in a really big way and for the worse. And so we're just trying to solve that problem. Um, and I'll definitely have to get you some of these if you didn't try them when we were in at the space station event, because it's just so great to be able to not feel guilty about them.
I had some of the little samples and they were amazing. Yeah, but I wanted to steal a bunch of the full bags and I wasn't able to like swipe a bunch of the full bags. So I'll just have to order some, or you can send us some. My whole team will have some baby puffs as a team. And I'm excited. Like, when is the adult stuff coming out?
So our goal is to start to try to launch them in Q4 of this year. So we're focused on the baby products. So if not Q4 2024, then maybe for Q1 of 2025 we'll have them out. But it's right around the corner, so stay tuned.
Okay, I'm excited. All right. So I want to wrap things up with two more questions. I know we're going long on time, but this is such an awesome story. I don't mind. I love this. The first question is, let's talk about some of the hardest moments along the journey. I want you to get kind of raw and real about like some of the toughest things that you've been through and then how you made it through those. And then we'll end on a little bit happier kind of like, where does Food Nerd go from here? How are you thinking about building your community, building your audience, and what is the total world domination kind of picture? And this is the type of thing that would be great for everyone if you totally dominated the world. Like, my wife would be so happy if I just ate Food Nerd products all day instead of Frito Lays and Pringles and all that junk.
Yeah. So some of the toughest moments, whew, I would say, you know, during the first few years, and when we're still having them, right? Like there's tough moments every single day in a startup. um, I would say one of the main things that kept me going, and I would say the biggest stressor has always been funds, right? Because you're making these small strides, but you're not really making revenue yet, right? Or you're not making enough revenue to cover your expenses. And so you're like constantly in the red when it comes to the startup phase, right?
You said 250 experiments. I mean, that's not cheap to run 250 experiments. Yeah.
It's not cheap. It was not cheap, and I had real people that I had to, pay, right, to do this. Um, and it was so, I mean, there were nights where I would just cry, you just go back to your raw human emotion, and then you gotta, you know, for me, it was a little bit of, I gotta feel that struggle. I gotta feel that, like, I don't know how the heck I'm gonna pay my employees tomorrow. But I know there's something larger and something that's so much more powerful that's driving, me, that I know I'm truly doing this to make the world a better place. And I just got to believe that the right people will be around, right? And I have to do my part, which is, those investors don't just show up at your door. You have to push. You have to be a constant advocate for your business, and you have to tell everybody. And you have to be your own banner. You have to be your own billboard. You have to just go to every event possible. And I would say one of the main things that I would do, because I'm all about motivation. If you can constantly motivate yourself, then you have the most powerful weapon, right? Because people are going to bring you down. Everything else is going to bring you down. The technology is going to fail. This is going to fail. It's going to be struggle. But if you can, have this kind of clear line in your mind and say, okay, the struggle is here and it's identifiable and I can put it in a box, but what I'm doing is bigger, then you can always put it back inside of your box. And you can always go back to that larger why, that larger motivation. And for me, I am a self-help junkie. So I would listen to, because why reinvent the wheel? There are amazing entrepreneurs that have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into some incredible content. And so I would listen to YouTube videos on entrepreneurial motivation. And I would just sit there and get yelled at and get pumped up I would listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger's speeches. I would listen to you know, Brene Brown. I would listen to all of these like incredible motivational individuals that talk about positivity, that talk about pushing through the struggle. And I was like, I guarantee you their struggle was more intense than mine, right? And there's always somebody who has it worse. There's always someone who has it better. But if you can find that common, like, hey, this isn't going to kill me. And if all falls and everything, doesn't work out, I at least am proud of myself and the mission that I'm following, then okay. It's all going to be okay, and it's that constant fall down and get back up. And I would say I would listen to David Goggins all the time. I may be saying his name wrong now that I'm saying it. But just listen to the people that motivate you. And I would listen to, in the R&D lab, you can ask my poor team members, we would listen to literally Tony Robbins, you name it, anybody on YouTube. We would let the algorithm choose who we listened to that day. And it would be from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. We would just listen to motivational things and we'd be all hyped up and pumped up. And then I'd go in my office and I'd cry. And I'd I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then I would send out 1,000,001 emails. And so the hard times were, this roller coaster, and it's probably still going to continue to be a roller coaster, but nothing new is easy, right? Nothing innovative is easy. And go into it knowing it's going to be hard and be excited about the challenge and know that there's people that are going to want to support you. And if you're trying to make this world a better place, there will always be a person and another human that will hold up your side of the weight when you can't. So get the right people around you and stay true to your why, and you could get through anything. And find some really great mentors. That's my other suggestion, is find some really, really great humans that will give you some good advice and will keep you motivated. So that's my struggle.
I love that. Well, we definitely need to have a big, hat tip to all of those many early, especially, volunteers and mentors, advisors, and people who were willing to just contribute because they were so passionate about what you were doing. And I'm sure they could feel your passion with what you were doing. So we definitely need to make sure that, they get, we can't probably say all of their names here, but all of you who helped bring Food Nerd to the point that it is today, thank you. Recognize you, because I think this is such a cool idea, and it's something that absolutely needs to become massive and take over the world. So to that point, where do you go from here? How do you take over the world, and how do you build an engaged audience and community around what you're doing?
Yeah. So the exciting thing is that, there's nobody more passionate, and I'm going to say mom, but I'm including dads too, than a passionate parent, right? We have the biggest voices and we make the purchasing decisions at home. And so we've been building such an exciting community, and I call them our Food Nerd family. We're building a family around really it's not really the products, right? The products are just the vehicle. It's more so we're building a community around doing what's right for our kids, right? That's our core mission. And being able to say hey, you deserve to know what's in your children's products, and you deserve to know how they were made. And that's huge. And there's so many parents that are once they realize wow, I can have my cake and eat it too, right? I can have a product that my kid will eat and snack on and stay distracted with, and I don't have to feel guilty about it, and they're getting their nutrients. Yeah, I'm on board, right? And so we're just building this incredible Food Nerd family around parents who are saying no more ultra processing, or hey, let's reduce the amount of ultra processing in our kids' diets, because if the better option exists, parents want it, right? Like, it's not like we don't have to force parents to give their kids better foods. Like, they're saying, please, like, please help us. This is a struggle. And so really building a ton of influencers that have the same mission as we do, is our main strategy. And then honestly, like, it's just, even if you're not an influencer, just you being a parent that is passionate about your kids' health, like, you know, 50 other parents in your life. So it's this word of mouth effect that we're seeing is so powerful. And honestly, like, there's nothing cuter than user generated content of kids. Like, kids just shoveling handfuls in their mouth is like the cutest thing in the world. And so we're really excited when people tag us and they share their kids eating the product, right? And like, it's just contagious, right? And so I'm hoping that, our strategy is letting the product do what it does and continuing to tell the truth about ultra processing, telling parents they do have a choice, and also building our technology so we can meet the demand and actually be able to produce large volumes to give people real options, so we can put Food Nerd at every gas station, right? So we have to be able to be in the same convenient spots that these ultra processed foods are, because we have to start to crowd them out, right? We have to give parents better options. And so our goal is scale our technology, build our community, and get into all of the purchasing places where people need food, right? And so that's our retail strategy. And that's all here in the US, but we're already building our international team, because people are reaching out for these products internationally. So we just brought on a European representative and an Asian representative that are seeing such a huge need for these products in Asia and in Europe, and in Africa. Like, we're seeing absolute, like, parents reaching out saying, when are you sending to this, to where I'm at? And we're like, not yet, but we will get there, and we'll get there. Whether it takes us a year to get there, I promise we will. And so it's really, laying out the right path to get there, and then putting the right people in place to help us actually get there. And I'm just really blessed to say that we have people that, like, are brought to us now at this point, right? Because they're like, this solves my problem, and I want to solve other parents' problems, because it's a universal problem and we all just need to work on it together. So I hope that, like, Food Nerd is a brand that people, they don't just think of products. They think of the future of food. Like, this company is trying to create the future of food. And it's literally not just like some massive corporation trying to make money. Like, we are a group of parents that have children that have issues and struggles. And we're just becoming more and more parents working together to spread the word. And that's our goal. So hopefully this time next year when we talk, we'll have Food Nerd and, different retailers and the world will know what Food Nerd is, and we'll be changing the lives of millions of children. That's my goal.
I love it. It's a perfect goal. And I think it's hard not to hear you tell the story and not get excited. I mean, it's hard to hear you tell the story and not get excited about it. I can sense your passion. You're very good at presenting it. And it's such a noble cause, that I think this is going to be phenomenally successful. And I'm so excited that you were able to take the time to be on the podcast today. Thank you so much. I hope you start feeling better. The cough and the sore throat. So I really appreciate you carving out some time to be with us. Let's finish really quickly with, where can people find you? And I'm assuming right now, is everything online sales, or are you in some retail locations yet?
Yeah, so everything is online at foodnerdinc.com. And all of our socials are at Food Nerd Inc. So you can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok. And we will be in select retailers. We're actually going to be launching with Central Markets here in Texas, which is very exciting. And we'll be in retail, and it's going to kind of, as our technology scales up, so we're our ability to be in more and more retail. So right now, direct to consumer, online, and I am on Amazon. starting this summer. So, you know, come see us directly on our website, come message us on social media, and please try the products, and please let us know if your kids love us, and please email us and tell us, because we want to know how we can continue to make products that you need. So we're excited and love all the consumer outreach.
I love it. Sharon, thank you so much for being on. Everybody, let's go buy some puffs from Food Nerd Inc. I'm going to gift it to all of my nieces and nephews, my siblings. I know my little sister, I'm going to give her a shout out, Meredith Carlson. I'm going to make you listen to this episode. I know you don't listen to my other ones, but this is the one you're going to have to listen to. Sharon, you're amazing. Thank you so much for being on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm grateful for platforms like this. So thank you.